Goedenavond iedereen. Good evening everybody. Welcome in the Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp in the Wintertuin. We are in the midst of the exhibition Guillaume Bijl, Multiples and Editions. And we use this exhibition as an environment for a talk tonight, which will focus on the use of the multiple in the work of Guillaume, but also in the art world in general. The topic or the quote for this meeting tonight is a statement by artist Man Ray: "To create is divine, to reproduce is human," of which I thought it was kind of relevant to the whole idea of the unique work of art against the multiple or the reproduced work of art in series. So tonight we will discuss some issues on art and its unicity versus art as a contingent of copies. Questions that could be answered tonight are: should a work of art be unique or not? Does the fact that a work of art has more than one copies or editions give it extra value to a work of art or not? That should be a question. Why should an artist select or choose for multiples, editions, print, art in series and in multiple copies? How do multiples as works of art relate to unique works of art in the oeuvre of an artist or a practitioner? Also interesting could be how do gallerists, art dealers, collectors and even museums and public collections look at multiples? Do they consider multiples the same value as unique paintings or sculptures? Are multiples a recent phenomenon, or do they already have a history on their own? And last but not least, the major question: who is Guillaume Bijl? So these are just a few questions that we will answer today. Actually, this exhibition has been running for a few days already. It will still be on this week and during the next weekend. So if you haven't seen the show yet, if you're a student or a teacher, please feel free to jump in every day in the afternoon. If you're an external visitor, please be welcome next Saturday or Sunday in the afternoon. There's more information on the website of the Royal Academy. This exhibition and also the book that accompanies the exhibition are the result of a research project conducted by David Vermeiren, who is here between us, and initiated by myself in collaboration with Guillaume Bijl already a few years ago. And the whole idea was to make an inventory of the works in edition of Guillaume Bijl. Actually, I had to really convince the artist in order to really engage in the research project, but I think now he's kind of proud of having them all together in a book and an exhibition. So let's celebrate that and have a chat tonight about multiples in the work of Guillaume and in the work of other artists. So I'd like to present to you the guests of tonight. To my right is Guillaume Bijl, a visual artist, who also has been a teacher in different international art schools, especially in Germany. Guillaume Bijl also is the author of all the multiples and works of art in edition in this exhibition. Next to him is Vaast Colson, who is also a visual artist and actually also a teacher at the Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp. Then we have Stella Lohaus, who is a gallerist. She ran a gallery in earlier days, and even before that was focusing on publishing editions even and multiples. And now she runs the art space LLS Paleis, where nowadays you can see the exhibition, the Serving Library Collection. Then we have to my left side David Vermeiren. David is a historian and a researcher who conducted the research project on the multiples of Guillaume Bijl, which was kind of a heavy labor going on for quite a long time in order to find out where most of the objects could be found and registered. And then last but not least we have Sophie Dedren. Sophie used to be the director of the Frans Mazereel Centrum for Printmaking in Castellet, and recently, she runs the gallery and project space Otti Park in Borgerhout together with Wim Vianen. And for the moment in Otti Park, there's an exhibition on display with the work of Jeff Gijs and Adrien Tirtion. So, welcome all of you. I suggest we start with Guillaume, actually, because this whole show is actually about his work, and he should be more or less the focal point of our discussion tonight. So, my first question, Guillaume, would be, very honestly, why did it take so long for you to engage in my question to you about bringing together all the multiples? In the beginning you were like a little bit reluctant, and now you seem to be very enthusiastic about it. Why were you reluctant in the beginning when I proposed to do such a thing, to bring them all together?
Yes, because I have, I think, only 10 at home. And it seems like, after all, that I made earthy. It's like this. Myself, I have only 10 multiples at home, so I was afraid how many it were, and it seems to be that it were 80 multiples that now are published in the book. And and also because I made multiples in Amsterdam, in Vienna, in New York, in France, in Holland. Yes, that's why I was afraid that we couldn't find them anymore after 40 years. Yeah. Mm.
Okay. I can understand that. Now you see them together in the book and the exhibition. You say it's more or less 80 of them, whereas you only own a copy of 10 of them yourself. Does this create new insights in your multiple practice? Have you learned something by seeing them all together now for the very first time?
It's like that. That I'm more like this installation artist, and also a small work like compositions and stories, and it's like this that the multiples I realized is mostly on demand. I'm not an artist to say, today I'm gonna make a multiple. It's galleries and Kunsthallen and art spaces that ask me, can you make also a multiple to spare the costs from installation and like that. So it's not an item that I'm busy with all the time. I see it more like, occasional on the site. But I'm glad that everything is found, and that now there is a book published.
Mm-hmm. If I get you well, you say the multiples were produced occasionally in the context of an exhibition or a project, sometimes even to finance the project, which sounds a little bit commercial, whereas an artist like Joseph Beuys explicitly says that the multiple to him is like a communication strategy to get more in touch literally with more people. Because when you make a work in many copies, they spread out all over the world. Yes. Does that ring a bell to you as well, the communication factor of the multiple, the fact that many people can own it for a reasonable price?
I never followed how many multiples are sold. Some multiples I earned something on the side, and I understand the philosophy, because artists are in general very generous, and it's also, I didn't follow also not what is sold, and not some gallery sold 10 exemplars, but I'm paid like 3 exemplars and things like that. So it's for me it's something on the side, but the values of these multiples are equal to my smaller work like composition, trouvées and stories that I have to admit. And now when I packed out multiples from 30 years ago, I was surprised how good sometimes they were.
Do you have a favorite in the collection? Is there one multiple of which you think this was really a hit? This is, let's say, my best example of the practice?
No, no. Also, with my installations, I'm not busy with the best. Some are better than others, I know. But no, I don't evaluate them. And I'm surprised that they're quite good.
And that they still hold even today after 30 years.
Yes.
The first one you did as an object, the object multiple, was somewhere in 1983. Terracotta, a piece of terracotta, kitsch, let's say, in the context of an exhibition in Rome. What made you decide in 1983 to produce a catalog and to have some of the catalogs go with a terracotta object that you actually bought probably in the streets of Rome? What at that time was the tilting point of deciding to do such a thing?
It was in 87. I made an installation, a transformation installation. I made a terracotta shop in Sala Uno. It's a Vatican domain. It's a sort of Kunsala, and we published a multiple on demand from the director, and I made my first multiple. I never did one before. It's also accidental that I made it, and I didn't see it for 35 years, and I still like it.
Yeah, it's a lovely piece. So that was indeed 87 and not 83, as I said. At that time, in 87, when you produced your first multiple as such, did you already know of multiples by other artists, let's say like Panamarenko or Beuys or Jeff Koons, artists using the multiple, or even Duchamp? Was there something like an involvement with the genre of the multiple with you at the time?
No, of course I knew Marcel Brothers, and Beuys made a lot of multiples, and most artists, because artists are generous, and they always make sometimes what they ask, and but it's a small oeuvre on itself, and I also liked this exhibition because the half of my multiples are also related to some installations, and in this exhibition now, where they're all together, you see the relation. It's a small retro perspective about my work in general, about my oeuvre in general. Yes.
Okay. I think the most spectacular aspect of the show here is the multiple objects, but of course there's also the posters, the prints, the photographs, the framed pieces. Let's talk a bit about your posters, because there's a big wall at the back of the exhibition showing most of your exhibition and installation posters. They're all in the collection of the MUCA in Antwerp, actually, that give them as a loan for this exhibition. Can you say something about the posters? Because, most of the time they don't even look like exhibition posters at all.
It's like this, that I make these realistic installations, sort of decors in art spaces, and then it's good to make a poster as an extension, that we can hang posters, also fake posters, trompe-l'œil posters in the city, like the Caravan show, like introduction of a new politician. From the beginning, I start to make posters to extend the installation towards the casual passerby in the streets and so on. So I see these posters related to my installations as quite important a quite important phenomenon in my oeuvre. I call it my graphic work.
Like the printmaking department of your work, yeah. The funny thing about your posters, I believe, is that normally a poster should communicate something, whereas your posters confuse. They seem to communicate something else than what they actually really communicate. They're confusing, like trompe-l'œil, as you say, like a mis-election or a political party proposing a new candidate. Okay. I have a final question concerning the exhibition and your use of the multiple. Some multiples are like, let's say, in an edition of 6, 5, sometimes even less, and some have big exhibition sizes, even large. How does that play? Is that something that you think about, or does it happen spontaneously, or?
Yeah, because it's mostly a question of the Kunstverein or a question from the galleries. Yeah, I decide this on the moment. How many exemplars there is, like here in the Middelheim in Antwerp. I realized a Roman street, and then I made small stones. I put in a small box and
those are still for sale, in the Middelheim Museum, I believe.
I thought they were sold out,
okay,
but there were
they were for sale for a long time.
1,500.
There was a lot, yeah.
I think there's only 700 signed.
It's
yes,
enormous, huh?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's also a little bit promotion for the Middelheim Museum and getting out of the cost and so on. I didn't earn so much. I don't know if I earned something.
You should get back to the Middelheim and talk it over.
I don't remember. Perhaps they gave me a small salary for it. I don't know anymore. I don't know.
Good. Let's talk to David Vermeiren. David actually did the laborious job of going after every multiple, tracing it down, tracking it down, talking to the owners, bringing it here, having it photographed, describing it for the catalog, and also providing an essay for the catalog as well on Guillaume Bijl's multiples. David, how did you actually experience your research, and how do you see the result?
Well, I remember the first time I went to Guillaume at home at his place, and we sat together, and he told me I only have like 10 of them, and he wasn't very supportive in the beginning, and was more like, yeah, it's going to be a hard job to find all of them. But throughout the moments we had together, I realized he did still remember a lot of them as we went through his biography, exhibition after exhibition, and he well remembered quite a lot of them, and even their owners or their publishers or the editors. It was just for me then to go searching on the internet and find those multiples and collectors. And yeah, after I guess about 4 years now, we can say that probably all of them are in the catalog now, so about 80 of them. So it was a really good experience together with Guillaume, and also to see him for the first time reunited with some of the multiples he made years ago, which was really funny to experience. Yeah.
When finding like collectors who still owned multiples of Guillaume, did you ever meet a collector who had, like, for instance, 20 or 30 of them, like a big fan of Guillaume's work, or did you really have to find every multiple together with an owner?
No, there were 2 Belgian collectors who had quite a lot of them. One of them is Paul Poelmans. He's the owner, for example, of the multiple behind you. He has, I guess, about 20 or 25 of them, so which was really easy, and I was happy to meet him quite early on in the research, so that I already had a vast amount of them. And the rest of them are actually almost all from unique collectors throughout Belgium, the Netherlands, even further away in Germany as well. Yeah.
Were there any specific difficulties that you met during the research? Things that got you frustrated or that really put you back, or?
Well, yeah, as Guillaume said, we some of them which are not in the book, for example, is the shopping, the one that was created on the occasion of the supermarket in Basel in 1990, which was included in the catalogue of the exhibition, which was a shopping chart filled with products and the poster, which is also hanging on the wall behind there. Yeah, I couldn't get into contact with the gallerist, and we actually don't know if one survived. It was an edition of 10, and yeah, so unfortunately no one still owned it, and I couldn't find it, but we had the image in the catalogue.
They still survived. They still survived. I know. I met 3 people who bought the multiple, and yeah, but I never was paid by the galleries. That's why I thought he will never borrow one. I don't know how much he sold. There were 10 exemplars, and 3 are sure sold.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we couldn't find them to include them in the exhibition, unfortunately. But then since I had the picture of it in the catalogue, it was okay, we have the image for the book, so then I was already sort of satisfied. Another one we missed is the one at Wiener Secession, which was on the occasion of the Der Mensch überwindet Distanzen exhibition, which was also on edition of 10 with, I guess it was a car. You once made a sketch of it to remind me how it looked, but we couldn't, we haven't found it till today. So
okay, like the Holy Grail, basically.
Yeah, indeed.
Were there any multiples that you discovered of which even Guillaume did not know the existence or did not remember it? Were there like any surprises or big discoveries in the research?
Remind me, Guillaume, I don't think so. Whenever you saw them, you immediately remembered how they were made and where you found them. So
no falsifications in the process neither?
No.
Actually, I asked everybody guest of tonight to bring a multiple, not by Guillaume, but by anybody, and to present the multiple to us and explain also why you like that specific multiple and what you think is interesting about it. Yeah. What did you bring? Maybe you can hold it to the camera. Yeah.
I brought this little glass bottle, which is a multiple in an edition of 100 by Paul van Hooijdonk, which says fly high, compressa antigravitazionale, so anti-gravitational pills for astronauts. It was published in or edited in 1972. It was 1 year after the Apollo 15 put his famous statue on the moon, and he had an exhibition going on in the 1972 presenting the statue, and he was in contact with the editor, which was an Italian editor. She's called it's Pari e Dispari. It's one of their earlier, they were founded in 1971, and they made many multiples and editions from mostly Italian Fluxus artists. And yeah, one of the early ones is this one by Paul, which came actually with a folder with 5 lithographs and pictures of the fallen astronaut, and yeah, I just found it very nice to have that. It's like filled with silver balls, which are to be anti-gravitational pills for the astronauts. So yeah, I thought I brought this one because it also, like many of the multiples here in by Guillaume, that they have like this they make you laugh in a way. Like many people that came here, yeah, and that's what I like about it actually. Yeah,
it's a nice thing. I've never seen it before actually. Yeah, it's rather rare.
Yeah,
apparently. Okay, thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Stella, let's have a look at what you brought, and also, but first some questions actually. When I recall it, Stella, before your gallery, you ran for a while an edition house for multiples. How did that start, and why did you decide at a certain point, early 90s, I think it was? I think the mic has to be put on. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I myself, I'm a big fan of editions and multiples. Indeed, I agree with Joseph Beuys that it's a form to reach a larger audience, also to reach students and people with less financial means. In that sense, I think it's also what I always say, your financial situation is never a reason that you think, I cannot afford to live with art. Like the Vereniging in Ghent, etc. I mean, many interesting institutions have systematically made often silk screens. And I think, because I like this idea so much, also to be part of something which is artistically for me equally valuable as an original work, because it's really an edition of a multiple is made by the artist in the idea of something with a number of copies, which for me is different than like a signed poster, which can also be nice, but it's something different. And so in 1995, I had this publishing house, which was called House. And we did many editions. I did it together with my mother, Annie de Decker. But after a while, for me, in the end, you are only busy, or for me it was like you are only busy with promoting and trying to sell and distribute this only piece that you have together with this artist. And as a gallerist, then the idea was like, if you work with you learn to know artists, you want to work with them, it's also nice to, for me it was more important to be able or to make collaborations with artists really to defend their total oeuvre and not only one smaller or larger print or object. And then from the multiple house came then my proper gallery.
Okay, I remember that you brought out some quite important stuff, like pieces with Lawrence Wiener, Giovanni Anselmo, artists your mother had worked with in the White Space in the 60s and 70s as well.
Yes,
and also
that's true.
younger artists as well.
Also younger artists. We had a very funny multiple, for example, by an artist which was then quite hot, like Fabrice Hibert. It was Deep Narcissus. It was a diving mask, where the glass of the diving mask was replaced by a mirror. So, but if you put it on, it was really like you dove into yourself. I mean, the element of Narcissus. And then it came with very extravagant boxes. So the wrapping was very important too, or was also part of it.
At that time, in the mid-90s, when you produced multiples, did that actually work? Were people interested in buying an edition, or did they really want to go for the unique piece? You know?
Yeah, that's very different. I think we had very few or almost non-Belgian clients. So we could feel that the Belgian collectors definitely preferred to pay, 10 or 50 times more to have a unique work, but then rather countries more with a, maybe like from Germany or from Holland, more like Protestant countries. They were absolutely fans. We had many enthusiasts from there. Also, in all, many artists also collect multiples and editions of other artists. I think half of our clientele were artists, which is also indeed very encouraging. I think if an artist buys something, it's something extra than only an art historian or a normal collector or a manager or yes.
I can imagine that producing a multiple together with an artist sometimes is not easy because artists have their demands and there's production consequences and costs involved and so on. What was at that time for you and your mother the hardest multiple to produce?
There was one multiple together with we did with Marijke van Warmerdam, which was not limited in number from the beginning, but limited in time. But the whole multiple had many different devices from one company nearby Brussels, then a very specific type of audio cassette player by Aiwa, a specific model where we immediately bought as many as possible, but then later, it was always on battery, so some of them broke down, and then we could not repair it. We had to buy a new one, but then the name, exactly the same design was not possible anymore. And then you see how difficult sometimes it is. So if you want to make a multiple, produce everything the same moment, and then it exists. But of course, sometimes it's also complicated because you absolutely have no idea. We had no idea how many we had to forecast in our idea. And then, so that was quite a difficult multiple, but still very beautiful, yes. Because the idea of the multiple was on this cassette recorder, was playing. We had to give her the collector could give a name, and then she recorded all unknown people pronouncing this name. And sometimes she was in New York, or she was long time in New York with PS1. So then you hear Stella Lohaus. So people who have to read for the first time a name, and sometimes they immediately say it, so you know it's someone with German roots. Other people, it's really very funny, yes.
I can imagine when you produce multiples that sometimes a certain multiple could be a real hit, like a complete sold out immediately, whereas other multiples were kind of very hard to get rid of.
Yes.
Without being indiscreet, but can you give an example of a major hit in the multiple field, and maybe also a little catastrophe of which you still have loads unsold copies?
I think we definitely had a hit with La Pichenette, a multiple by Anne-Veronica Janssens, consisting of two African aluminium type of half spheres, and Pichenette is making this movement. So you could tung tung, and then it had a very special sound. That was not such a high number, so it were 20 copies, and that went rather well. She also asked it sometimes regularly in exhibitions, which always helps, of course. A multiple that was very difficult. Well, actually, I don't like to say it, but there was a multiple by Lawrence Weiner, which was quite difficult to sell. I think also because he already has many multiples. That's also something that plays a role. And it was he was already very well known in his career when we produced it. So the multiple was also relatively expensive as a multiple.
Was it like the box with the sand in it?
Yes.
And the objects? Yeah.
Quick and seashells plus water. Yes, exactly. But we also had multiples of like Thomas Schutte or Jimmy Durham. And even if they are now sold out, it took quite 5 or 6 years or 7 years. It's not that it immediately happened in a week time.
Yeah. Sometimes you really have to give it time in order to have the market grow almost for that specific multiple.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
For the moment you run LLS Palace, which is more like a project space.
Yes.
But I have the impression that with any exhibition you produce something. You edit like print or tabloid, or there is an edition going with the show. So you still have the knack for the multiple. Is it different like in the earlier days then?
I think for LLS Palace, actually it's also a collaborative idea of Joël Tuurlinks and myself to have an extra exhibition space on paper in order that everything, because the space is okay, it's medium, it's not small, but it's not like really a large space. And maybe for some artists, she said, there were still many ideas that could not be realized within the limitations of the space. So she said, why don't you create an extra 2-dimensional space on the side in the form of a dagblad? Of course, this was a very good idea. And I think also as LLS Palace, like LLS 387, which was first run by Ulrike Lindmeier. It was also in the house of Uli and Guillaume. It was really a space that started to give again the artist space to the artist, and not that it is the space of the curator and the artists are only invited. So for me, further in that idea of thinking, it was important to give the text or the dagblad element, whether they would fill it with text or inventory or drawings or like Vaast has also done something with a card. Really that the artist can again also determine what is on the paper, what is written on him. So there is also always a press text that I write or someone else, but that is never in this in this dagblad, in this magazine. So it's just an extra extension, and some artists come with 30 pages, and other artists only have one image and everything in between. Yes.
Okay. My final question to you then is, what multiple did you bring actually, and why?
Yes, I brought an edition from LLS Paleis, and for me it was, first of all, relatively large. I will show it immediately, because I also wanted to get rid of the idea, and I'm very happy with the work in your background, that a multiple is only a small object or a so-called little artwork, which in my opinion is contradictory, because also a small work is an artwork. But I wanted to enter the idea that sometimes artists conceive something as a series, but while they execute it, in fact, every copy of the series, of the total edition, is different. And an artist who has done this quite explicitly was Suchan Kinoshita, who had an exhibition about where she lived and what she discovered, and it was clay underneath her house, and behind the corner a very exclusive chocolatier, Frédéric Blondel. So she made an edition with these two elements, and in her work also A and O, like alpha and omega, but also the element of chaos and the unpredictable play an important role. So also there the A and the O are important. So she made then like in a laboratory or like a kitchen, she added water to the clay and made a silk screen with clay, and she heated the chocolate and she made silk screen with chocolate. So you have 5 times A in chocolate, A in clay, O in chocolate, O in clay. And then she only filled the grid once, so you immediately see how the image diminishes. And just all of that to say that I think it's conceived as an edition. It's also the price like of an edition, but actually every owner has really in fact a unique artwork, because it's that moment of the print. Yes.
Completely handmade as well, not
exactly.
Produced industrially. Yep.
No, it's exactly. It's not industrially produced. Yes.
Okay. Can you show it to us?
Yes.
Camera is over there. Yeah.
So this is the A in chocolate.
Still for sale.
You can see it was at the beginning, and then of course to make the contrast, it is the O in clay, the last one.
Almost impossible to read, indeed. Yeah. This almost looks like a performance, Stella.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good. Those multiples really look like prints, which brings me actually in a perfect way to Sophie Deidre, who used to be in a former life the director of the Frans Mazereel Centrum in Kasterlee, a printmaking institution, which also has a huge archive of printed editions. Actually, Sophie, how would you relate the history of the print with the history of the multiple? From your expertise of the printmaking studios. Is a print to you a multiple, or is it like something different?
I think for me it's the same. I think when I started to work in the Frans Mazereel Center, my background is, I have an art practice as a sculpturist. So when I started to work there, I asked myself, like, okay, this is a printmaking center with all kinds of different kinds of techniques, and how does it relate to other works? And for me, it was like, as a sculptor, I think also you can make three-dimensional works in addition. So for me it was like quite similar, but I think it's hard for the people who, or the artists who worked there as a printmaker. For them it was, I think, harder to accept that it's similar. Because it's more for me the idea what's behind it than the technique. Yeah, and that was a starting point, I think, also how I worked there for 9 years and try to do different kinds of projects to think about mobility of an image, or the multiplicity of an object, and also the public character of, because it's said before that if you produce works in an edition, it can reach more people. So it's more, has a more public character. So it makes things also more generous as an artist. So these things were for me very important to work as in the studio with the artists who came on a residency to think about why they want to make copies or editions, but also to do exhibitions around these themes to elaborate the whole idea of an edition, and also about printmaking itself, and also of course of the technique. And at one point we had also artists who came to make one silk screen instead of 10, of an edition of 10. So we opened up the whole idea of what an edition or what the printmaking can be for an edition. And the other way around, like Stella told, like every copy or every print you take is different, and especially with Kinoshita's work, you see it directly. So this was the whole opposite of the way I worked there at the Frans Masereel Center.
I guess when you started there, the whole idea of printmaking was still kind of traditional, like etchings, lithographies, lino cuts, wood cuts, silk screens. Can you give an example of concrete example of how printmaking has expanded the last years? We saw examples of chocolate and clay print.
I think when I started to work there, there was already like a younger public from artists who were trying to define the rules about printmaking in an elaborate way by using the lithostone as an drager,
a bearer.
To print on that it becomes a unique piece. So it was already there, but what we did by selecting the residencies, we really tried to select the people who were already working in that way. And so for a lot of other printmakers, it was difficult to get in anymore because we really were focusing, because it was important to do that also, to give space also for these old traditional techniques that they got actually a new life. Because I found in the library of Frans Masereel Centrum a codex where you could read for 100 pages how to number a copy. So it was all about rules, and that's actually almost killed almost the whole idea of because all these different kinds of techniques are beautiful in themselves, but you have to think before. It's like a common expression. You have to think before you ink. It's just if you want to use silk screen, then you have to ask you a question why you want to use silk screen and not litho or etching. So we started up to have conversations with everybody who came in to really discuss this kind of techniques and also the edition of making. Because when I started to work there, there's like a sign. I think it comes from the 80s or the 90s for the Frans Masereel. It says maximum 25 copies. So it says quite a lot about also the history.
To keep it still like exclusive, like a limited edition, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. what is kind of the maximum of edition size that was produced in the Frans Mazereel Centrum at your time? Because as you say, 25 maximum was the formal earlier attitude, but using like printing presses and so on and so on, is there also a limit to edition size, technically speaking?
It depends on which technique you want to use. I remember we did an edition in etching with Dorothy Iaione. We worked quite it's an edition of 35, and it was really hard to get the 35 right. So we worked there for a really long time on it. So it depends on the technique which you want to use. At the end, we bought also a Riso copy machine. Then the whole idea of 25 get lost, and you started to make editions of 200, 300, depending actually on the project the artist was making. Also, this was also a discussion we tried to do, like how many copies do we really want to have, because it's also important that it's not stuck somewhere in your basement or somewhere in your archive, that it really can circulate. That's also the importance of an edition, I think. I did during that years also with Chef Gas, the archive books.
That was my next question. You collaborated very closely with Chef Gas, who also had a tradition of being a multiple maker, producing print and objects in series and so on. Did you discuss with Chef Gas the whole idea of printmaking, making works in series, in editions? Because I believe that was kind of one of his strategies, deliberately.
That was super important. I think it was a political choice of Chef. We never discussed it really. But my first question to Chef was when I started to work there in 2010. I wrote him a letter and I said, because I found out he was like, in the beginning of the 70s, he was connected with the Frans Mazereel, with the VZW of Frans Mazereel.
Co-founder, eh? Yep.
Yeah, he was the co-founder, artistic coordinator. He has like a kind of name card that says artistic coordinator of the Frans Mazereel, but it was the VZW who made all this kind of editions, and Chef made also an edition with Marcel Broodhaars in 1972. For Chef was this whole idea of making editions and multiply a lot of works, because Women's Questions, for example, he really went from the original to a poster form and all different stadiums in between. But again, for him, it was a political choice, I think, and also to question the whole idea about the original and the copy, of course. And also, he was trying to reach as much people, because for him it was also important, the question of how can a group of people like the same work. This was also somewhere in his... but we never discussed it really, but what we discussed was, of course, the books we made.
You made some archive books together with him that came also as an edition.
The edition, because making books, of course, costs money, and Chef had in his mind to make his whole archive in a copy format, in a book. So we started with a starting budget, and we said, okay, we're going to try to print these books in a copy of 200 in the beginning it was, and then to sell everything, and with that money we make book number 3, and so we go on and go on. But the whole idea was also to put it in a low number, was also that it was fast sold, that we didn't keep the books so long. And also that it becomes, after a while, if you print a book in 100 copies, after a while it gets also this unique form of, because 100 copies is still not so much.
So for a book, 100 copies is very limited, whereas for a multiple, 100 copies is already like kind of an edition size. And for a silk screen, it's also normal. And for a book, 100 is very small. How do you explain this difference in perception? Why is a book of 100 copies rare and a silk screen of 100 normal?
Yeah, I think with books, the distribution possibility with books, it's a little bit better than I think with editions. And yeah, yeah, I think the finance, like a book is mostly also a little bit cheaper than in a multiple. And also a multiple refers, I think, also a little bit more to the autonomous work than a book is a new format. I think also than a multiple. A multiple is it's more an object, and with a book it gets a whole other idea. You have to think differently, and from producing a book, we produced the book with Chef in a digital format, so we could stay low. But normally, in offsets you can print much easily. I don't know.
And of course, traditionally, a book has been considered to be a mass medium in early days.
Also.
And then, of course, 100 copies of a book is like kind of strange thing to do. Okay. What did you bring actually for show and tell?
I brought
a book.
A book. I brought a small book because I think it's indeed important to talk about scale. In the edition, you brought a big one. I brought a small one. I almost forgot it at home. This is the maritime history of the Netherlands of Simona Di Nicolai and Ivo Provoost. I brought it because it was super hard to choose, but I think for me it's for this panel conversation for today, what Di Nicolai and Provoost do when they're starting a new project. They start from the beginning to think about all these communication elements which are around the project, like a poster, an invitation, a book, perhaps a multiple. They integrate it from the start. I have super good memories about an exhibition we did in 2015 where we presented over 130 different works of them in the Fransmans Rail Center, all related to all kind of printed matter. Also multiples, and that shows also that an artist's practice can exist almost exclusively of multiples and editions, and they have now a show in the SMAC in next week. I think it's super good for them. Anyway, for me it was. Important to add to this panel conversation that editions and multiples can be really a huge part of your artist practice, and that this is almost as important as an autonomous work, as also what Stella was saying.
And what makes that particular book an interesting artist book to you?
I think it's it's also a little bit. It has the idea of a catalog, but I don't know. It has an idea of a catalog of art objects in it, but these are also objects of people. The boats are from people who are living in Den Haag, and Simona and Ivo, they get a loan of them to put it in the gallery of West in Den Haag. I think it's for me it's the content and the whole attitude of them, which you can read in this smaller book.
It looks very unspectacular, which is also very nice. It looks like a little classic basic catalog, and it hides more actually than it reveals.
Indeed.
Okay. A final question to you, Sophie. In your new art space, Otti Park, you will show the work of artists, of course. Will you also bring out prints, multiples, editions, and the like?
Yeah, it's actually funny that you. We made actually a small edition with Adrien Tertiaux. It was funny because it was not a plan, because Adrien Tertiaux makes more 3D works, big, huge, monumental sculptures, but we printed actually a comic of him in a Riso edition of 100, because throughout the discussion of the theme of the exhibition, which starts in the Le Magasin in Grenoble, about proposing projects to institutions and how it can fail, and what actually what are leftovers of these proposals. And Adrien worked for 2 years in Le Magasin, and he had like 8 or 9 or 10 different kinds of proposals to work with the scenography of the architecture of Le Magasin. And a lot of these projects were not happening, and the whole idea was like how we can documentate this process, because this is also an important work. And because of Adrien, his practice that he also do comics, we started thinking in a kind of comic book, and that's why we made this edition. And for me it was quite funny, because I was thinking like, okay, I'm doing it again, so
doing the same stuff as in Frans Mazereel.
Yeah, in a way it's something I think it's quite important, and and fun to do also.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally we go to Vaast Colson. Vaast, as an artist who makes multiples himself, how do you look at this show by Guillaume? You know the work of Guillaume. How do you feel like when you see all these multiples together, when you compare them with your practice as an editioner or multiple maker?
Well, that's a tricky question, as the master is sitting beside me. But no, I think for me, an exhibition like this is a compliment for the school and for the students, and also for the medium. So I'm very overwhelmed by the professional way this Wintertuin that we know so well is transformed into a high-level presentation. So that's one thing, and on the other hand, the consistency of the works is striking for me.
They look very different,
right,
but they're very consistent. Yeah.
Right, the quality is so consistent, as you see all the dates go back, or come towards us, like even an edition made for this specific moment. So, no, I think it's in a way, how do you say that? It underlines, I think, the consistency of an artist for me, as you could also find in drawing or bookmaking. I think also in the editions as a medium in itself, you can really find the artist's quality. And so for me, it's very, it's like thumbing through a book. You go from here to there, back again. You always miss something. So
you recognize a lot of stuff as well. Yeah.
Right, and that's why I think also the book is a nice, like the book complements the exhibition, and I'm a big fan of also Catalogue Raisonnés, because there is an effort to also bring the technical, almost the ID card of every object, and that interests me also a lot, because as a maker, for me, the ID card, if we can call it that, the specifics, these are also the structures, the strategies you can play with, like size, edition size, how it's made, how it relates to one another, how it's distributed, price. So all those elements for me, as in a unique work, you also have, it also has its specific properties, but for me, the medium, multiple or edition is to understand these properties and to be able to tweak them. So, and as you look around here, you see it's been tweaked a lot, and that's for me a compliment of imagination and generosity, as Guillaume said himself.
Okay. I think one of the first works of you I met was multiple, like your famous your skateboard, No More Superheroes, and also your artist booklet, Kill, with the little sketches and drawings in it. How important is work in edition for you as an artist? Because in your catalogs you pay as much attention to your multiples as to your performances and installations and unique pieces.
Certainly, I think what's funny is that at the moment I was making these early gestures, I wasn't as much aware of the tradition, not of the tradition of the artist book as a medium, not of the tradition of the multiple as a medium, but I was coming from more do-it-yourself scene in skateboarding and music, and these are young people self-publishing. So it's coming from there, and of course you naturally you get to know more the tradition, and yeah, every time you see something you're overwhelmed of the dates that other artists have been doing things, and also that there's such an affinity with the strategies or the tactics that certain artists tackle. So it became, of course, very important, and I think it also has to do with, like Sophie is quoting Jeff Gijs more or less, that it also has a political or a social aspect to it also, that you think about different means of distribution, and that even a multiple can be free, or it can be produced by the person who picks it up by chance, or so there's a lot of wiggle room in that medium for me. So it's certainly very important, yeah.
What artists, you refer to the DIY movement and the skate punk subculture and so on. What artists to you are, apart from Guillaume of course, important in the history of the multiple?
Yeah, I think as it will of course not be shocking that I say Martin Kippenberger, because I'm a big fan of his on every element of his practice, and what's funny is that I got to know his work in the year he died, because Taschen put out this book to commemorate him, and I bought it for the paintings because I was studying painting here, but that book never let me go. Then I saw the installations, then I saw the sculptures, then I saw the posters, then I saw the editions, then I saw the postcards, you know. So it's like a figure that keeps on coming back in that sense, and a bit later on, a person like Philiou, because he's a bit more hidden away in the cracks of art history, and also the whole Fluxus gang was very inspirational. And I must say that at a certain point, I by chance got to see a show of Joseph Beuys, his editions, and that blew me away also, because then I knew how Kippenberger was quoting so much this master. So that was, yeah.
You did quite a lot of editions and multiples. Pieces in small editions, pieces in very large editions, pieces that were given for free as well. Huh? What is your favorite multiple?
Of myself?
From your own work, yeah. The one like Guillaume says, I like all of them, but some are better to me than others.
Yeah, yeah.
But what to you was kind of successful in your own practice, and why?
Well, then I might say you used to be part of something, because it's
describe it.
Yeah, it's a bigger. A big chunk of foam, so I had a sort of a cake form made out of foam in 2 colors.
Very, very large.
Quite big, I think. The height is 70 centimeters of the cake itself, and I had the cake cut in 12 equal pieces, and this became then an edition, and every edition had a sort of a placard, a sort of a plaque that goes with it, with the little guy pointing at a cake and saying, "You used to be part of something." And the cake is then boxed into a crate, but the crate also can function as the socle of the cake, so it can be shown in different ways, and I like that idea that it doesn't have a stable form that it has to be presented in, but that the owner can deal with it in the way he or she pleases. Yeah, and I think
It's also interesting because the piece of cake says you used to be part of something,
Yeah.
so every piece of a multiple is part of the total edition size,
Yes, exactly.
which also plays in your skateboard series.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, because those skateboards, they were really, I remember as young skaters, we would also hang the skateboard on the walls before we skated on them or afterwards when they were totally beaten down. But I think already there they had a sort of they weren't made for that, but a lot of skateboarders, and especially skateboarders who now don't skate anymore but make a bit more money, now can buy a lot more skateboards. So there's a lot of collectors also of this. So I think in a way already vinyl and skateboards and skate magazines, maybe they were the first objects that I would collect.
And T-shirts probably as well?
T-shirts, yes, for sure, band shirts. So it's, yeah, a very complex relationship of identifying with the quality, but also knowing you're supporting a touring band or a skate company that's owned by skateboarders. So, yeah.
Being part of something.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. As a teacher in an art school that really focuses on individual producing of unique objects, like in the painting studio where you work or the sculpture studio where you work, how would you relate to the multiple as a pedagogical tool? Do you think there is a need in an art school like this to put the multiple more to the center of practice, like we're doing now a little bit with this exhibition? And how would you then do that?
Well, I think an exhibition is a good format because here the works really can fend for themselves, and I have the feeling it's important, even though I believe that it's good to pass on information as much as possible. I also think it's very important that students have a bit of space, let's say outside of the center, to find their own niche. I think for me to make that little magazine booklet, was a niche that was fulfilling. So I don't think I would propose to really over inform in that sense, but I think like a hint, a serious hint like this can really lure in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people who will say, whoa, this is an interesting strategy or tactic.
Do you feel with the younger generation of emerging artists and art students that editing, publishing, releasing, is it in nowadays, or is it completely forgotten for a while?
I think it's really it's come out of its hibernating state. So I think it's very much back, but I must also say that that doesn't mean that it's all quality. So I'm a bit afraid of the democratization, as much as it is a tool of democratization, which I think is important. But I think quality is quality, and I think that's also important that being part of something in that sense is also not enough. So I think it's good to think about different elements or different possibilities of quality, and sometimes I have the feeling that being part of it, daarbij zijn, that's already fine, and I'm a bit critical of that, but
and also even that a multiple deserves as much or even more attention than a unique work of art, because then the quality
for sure
is like put in series. Yeah,
I think so. I think we live in a moment in which lifestyle is very a good product, and also the social, the interhuman is also capitalized on, and I think that maybe Facebook and Instagram is also like making us the multiple, and that's why I believe so strongly in those strategies at those different moments in art history, because it goes against the grain. It's not to satisfy, and it's to look for another way around something. So yeah.
Okay, what multiple did you bring and why?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's very predictable, but I brought Model Ricci, and this is an object by Martin Kiepenberger. And there are 100 of these. There are 80 numbered and then 20 artist proofs. And it consists of a little piece of wood, and then it has a key holder, a key ring attached to it, and the key ring shows us a woodcut like a head. And what happened is that Martin Kippenberger had I think it's the Bundeskanzler at the moment. His name escapes me, but it's from just before Weizsäcker, is that possible? Yeah, Weizsäcker. So it's Richard von Weizsäcker, and he had his head sculpted, cut out by a professional Tiroler sculptor, and then he had his assistant reduce the head to 100 pieces of wood, so the head was cut up in 100 elements. So for me that's interesting, that the wood was part of something, and the idea that the image is added to it in such it's such a almost like from a carnival, you know. The key ring is a very popular, it's
also a strangely looking awkward object. It doesn't look artistic at all. It looks very trashy and cheap.
Yeah. And like I also brought the catalog that the Mücke made
of multiples.
So they showed all his multiples at a certain point, which was really amazing. It's a bit like what's happening here. And what I enjoy about these books is that they are so technical, and that you can read that what it's made of course, the edition size, who produced it, who edited it, and so that interests me a lot. And for me, this is also a way to capture what the multiple, of course, is a physical object which you can hold and look at and cherish. But I also enjoy a collection of all these different strategies in a simple book. A
question: where and how did you buy the Kippenberger piece? Because it's antiquarian, basically. When was it produced? Do you know?
In 1990.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was also produced for Texte sur Kunst.
The magazine.
The magazine, yeah. And I bought
like
it.
Parquet, they also produce a lot of multiples.
Yeah. And I bought it on eBay, I think.
Okay. Yeah. And were you like actually looking for that specific piece, or were you like discovering it and immediately like responding?
This was in the moment where I was manic and going for everything with Kippenberger's name on eBay.
Whatever.
But now I'm not as manic at this moment. So.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's a moment, because I was especially focused on the books. But then I saw this, I'm like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about art students and multiples, it just made me realize that our students see multiples in the halls of the academy every day, because the plaster casts you see in the museum all over are like multiple editions of original marble-sized copies of Greek bronze artwork. So already in the statues in the corridors, you have the whole idea of the multiple, which looks very classical. But indeed, art maybe always has been more multiple light than not, maybe.
Yeah, I think for sure when you look at how different cultures deal with the cultural products, that I think the West is leading the way with the sort of making it a commodity, and not just a lot of wooden masks are anonymous or get remade and remade and remade. So I think it's a very funny that this strategy, the multiple as an art strategy, that it pops up here. It makes sense, I think.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to conclude by asking you if you want to ask a question to anybody else here in the studio tonight. Is there something that has not been touched upon yet? Does anybody have a question for anybody? Seems like a stupid game, but maybe there are some questions still to be. Yeah, Guillaume? Use your microphone, Guillaume.
Stella, I remember that you made this multiple, the stone thrown in a television from Jimmy Durham. Are they all sold?
No, they are not all sold.
What?
No, they are not yet all sold.
How much is it?
I suggest you discuss
will
this
yes.
after.
But that was
How
also.
much?
I don't recall. I don't know the prices by heart here, but I
Is it still the same price as?
No,
fish?
unfortunately
inform you.
not. Yes, that's also something. Indeed, sometimes people think that, in fact, the pricing of a multiple follows the pricing of like the original work, as you also said. So at a certain point of early works that are quite expensive, also early multiples are often more expensive because they are more asked than contemporary unique works of an artist. So it's a very funny pricing. And I remember when we did an edition with Thomas Schutte, it's always difficult, how much should we ask? What is the price of a multiple? And it was a box, and he put the whole box, all the boxes, it was an edition of 50 in a huge way, like a pyramid on the table. And he said, a unique work of this size costs, at that time, 750,000 Belgian francs. I think it is a little bit less than 20,000 euro. And then he divided that by 50, and then the multiple was 15,000 Belgian francs. And in that sense, also in the pricing, you had part of something. So as if everybody had paid 1/50th of what would be the price of a unique work. It was very funny because other
And
multiples...
it makes sense. It really makes sense to do it.
It does make sense, but with other projects we had, 1/3 for the art, 1/3 is the production cost, 1/3 is the artist, 1/3 is the publishing house. But that is quite difficult. In the end, you try to keep the production as low as possible, and then you split 50-50, like in a gallery sale, so to say. But the pricing is always very difficult to find because it all depends on the edition number. Yes, and as limited as they are, it's always more expensive if it's more limited. That's very deep in our culture. Yes.
The rarity. Yeah.
But this rule, when it was a unique work and when it's 10 exemplars. Then the price is also many times seen as that. I also had this with some multiples.
There's also the awkward discussion of what is a multiple, because artists like Rodin have had their bronzes cast in 9 to 10 copies, which are still considered like unique pieces, while there are of course multiples also in a certain way, or film pieces are distributed in 9 copies and still considered unique pieces of artists. So maybe my final question to you could be, trying to define the multiple, what actually makes a multiple? Because there is still some vagueness about it. I think we should have started maybe with that question, but maybe we should end with that question. Does anybody has a proposal?
No, but it's just a paradox, because exactly in film or in photography, you have exactly the same copy, which with any multiple which is handmade, you can never achieve this, or like the edition with Vaast, with Black Pete. So, I think it's always more interesting if you see that it's conceived as a multiple, but in a certain sense, it escapes the multiple and becomes. It has unique elements, but I think more the mindset of it is as a multiple.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the way it is conceived conceptually.
Conceptually, yes.
Vaast, do you have a kind of a definition or a working definition for what a multiple, in your opinion, is?
I wouldn't try to do that, but I agree that for me, the means of production is part of the the conceptualization and the materialization. So for some artists that it's handmade is important, like this tabletop press. For some artists, they don't want to even touch it themselves. They maybe don't even want to see it, so it has to be away from them. So the idea how it relates to production and to the improvised or the interhuman quality, or more the commodified. So for me, those are all more conceptual properties. And so for me, an important element is the idea that it's can be dealt with as a medium, and not necessarily just a reproduction in of that there are, for example, 100 posters. I think these posters are not a multiple because they're posters, but because how they function artistically. So for me, that's the key thing.
So also the more the conceptual aspect than the physical aspect of the multiple.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about like how some artists, and then it's pure economical, try to fill. You can have a hierarchy in who can pay what, and for the paupers, we'll make an edition of the same image that of the painting, and then I'm not always convinced. But of course, the map is a farde, is a nice idea to bring together different images of an artist. So then again, it's more a strategy or a tactical decision, and not just
a knockoff of an existing piece.
Right, I would be careful with that.
Yeah, okay. David, what to you is a multiple? If somebody would ask you what is a multiple, what would you say?
Well, I think it is, whenever there's more than one of it, and especially in connection with like Guillaume's work, it's very important that there's a certificate going with the multiple, because the use of objet trouvé, which you have a lot of objects here which are in a very high number available in various shops, but only those that are in this specific combination as shown here, they are the multiple as created by Guillaume. So the description of it and the authorization of it makes it not a unique but a multiple. And
because that was forgotten to mention, because every piece here on display has a certificate somewhere in a folder, kept archived as well. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Good. Sophie, what to you would be the definition of the multiple? Okay.
It's also because I don't sign objects. I always deliver a certificate.
Yeah. Okay. Sophie?
For me, it was very much a little bit what Vaast said about the relationship between the multiple and the work in general, your artistic oeuvre. That has to be really connected, because with Guillaume, it's super clear. But with some people or some artists, they make multiples, which the relation with their other work it's quite vague. So for me, it is super important that the link is very close, and that the artist's practice or the methodology or the production is like similar. And then we talk also about scale. But it has to be close. Coherent. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guillaume, what to you would be the definition of a multiple? If anybody would ask, Guillaume, you make multiples, what is it? What does it mean? How would you describe it in a nutshell?
It's a work, in different numbers. I don't have a philosophy about multiples. No, but it's also a social aspect that, like, students can buy it, and people who doesn't have big budgets. Like now in the art world, prices are getting crazy. Let's say.
John Baldessari once said in an interview, every artist should have a cheap line. And that would be the artist book or the multiple, actually. And there was once an exhibition in London about multiples, and the title was 3 to Infinity. So the exhibition curator said 1 work is unique, 2 is a copy, 3 is a multiples, and then it could be into infinity. So 3 to Infinity was actually the title of that show, which I think explains it very well. And keeps the spectrum and the range widely open to what a multiple could be. Good. As a little gift, I would like to give all of you the multiple we did with the Academy very recently. It's a scarf designed by two alumni graphic designers of the Academy, Nana Rezeke and Stefanie Specht, and I will give you a copy after our conversation. It's a multiple that you can wear and that you can use as a work of art as well. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight. Guillaume, thank you very much for this beautiful museum show in the Academy. We're very honored to have it here. And to anybody at home, it is still open, the show, this week and next weekend, Saturday, Sunday afternoon. Please come over to check it out. Thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Yeah. Thank you.